Thank you, Senator Warren. Senator Vance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm going to direct my questions to Mr. Desirik. So, first, let me just say, I've got a 6-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old, and my heart goes out to you because I know that you've engaged in this fight because you lost a 7-year-old daughter, and I know there are a lot of other folks here who've lost kids, and my heart goes out to you as well. The goal here, of course, is to try to get to a society where no parent has to bury their own kid because of an illness that's currently incurable. I know we're all working towards that goal. And the worry that I have is that given the limited patient populations, because some of these diseases are incredibly rare, and because of how differently we treat pediatric illnesses and the medicines to treat pediatric illnesses, that we're making some mistakes here. And I know, Mr. Desirik, there is an argument that the right to try legislation, the expanded access that happened during the last administration, which I think was a good thing, that satisfies some of the concerns that you have with the current way in which we give patients access to these drugs. I'd like you maybe just to explain why that's not right. What are we still not doing correctly in this space?
Well, I think anytime that we've tried any of the right to try elements within our specific disease classification, there's been an unwillingness to make it apply to pediatrics. You know, right to try seems to be something that may have some adult applications to it, and I can't really speak to it because I don't touch those populations. But within the pediatric realm with it, everybody's kind of looked at it and said, well, yeah, it's not going to go for children's cancers. And I think that's, that's really the cornerstone of everything that we're talking about here, is because I think what we tend to do is we tend to think it along the lines of the ideal circumstance. We think of it as a clinical trial and how these can be perfected and how we can do better with it. But at the end of the day, all these acts and all these regulations are dealing with imperfect scenarios. A clinical trial requires things such as investment, accrual, time, biomarkers, and certainly a completion. And the issue is while we all, I think, see the need for clinical trials, we're dealing with scenarios to which these things don't exist. We can't get it. We can't get accruals. I mean, I'm witnessing right now a trial that we're putting out there with kids in our disease classification, and they have an accrual number of 400 patients. We only have 400 kids that are diagnosed per year. That means this trial is never going to get finished. It's going to have 8 years to be able to get there, and by then we're already going to know whether it works or doesn't work with it. And so you can't think of it in those ways. We have to go into this with the idea that we don't have the things to do the clinical trials sometimes. And so Promising Pathway effectively fills that need.
So, Mr. Desirik, can you explain to me just this particular point? So very often, and I've worked with companies, and in my private life, my prior life, I should say, when I was in the private sector, we actually worked with some biopharmaceutical companies doing clinical trials. One of the things, of course, you're trying to do in some of these cancer therapeutics is identify whether the addition of the therapeutic increases the life of the patient, right? It's one of the primary endpoints oftentimes. But in some of the diseases we're dealing with, especially in pediatric cases, extending the time from 3 months of life to 9 months of life is not really practical because the time given for the individual patient, for a child, is so small. So the idea that you're going to somehow reach a classic adult endpoint in a pediatric case sometimes just doesn't make any sense, does it?
Absolutely not. I mean, we can't reach those endpoints. I mean, frankly, I think our community is happy with anything that we can add. I mean, just another day is what we're looking for. Sure. And we've seen some things that have worked that we've applied, and we try to do this with. And they've added months. Right now, I would guess from looking at some of the registry data, we see that they've probably expanded that by threefold, and that's good. But we were only talking about, maybe 6 months. So threefold is a year and a half. That's not a life by any stretch of the imagination. Will it ever be at that case? So it's just, we have to take it and we have to try to grow it as much as we can.
I appreciate that. I appreciate all of you for being here. And the last comment I'd make here is that we all understand that we have to do better. And what occurs to me just in looking at the Senator Braun's PPA and just talking with Mr. Deserek, both in this context and in others, is that we have a clinical trial situation. We have a clinical trial infrastructure in this country that's in some ways designed for adult diseases and very common diseases. And if we don't fix the underlying infrastructure, we may have a lot of kids out there who are languishing, who are dying, not because there aren't therapeutics and not because there isn't capital to invest in these new therapeutics, but because the regulatory regime doesn't allow us to actually try these things and figure out whether they work. I think we need to fix that problem. I applaud Senator Braun for trying to take a swing at it.
If I may add something to that as well with it.